When we look out across the vast tapestry of life on our planet, we see countless strategies for survival. Some creatures are built for speed, others for stealth. Some rely on brute strength, and others on camouflage. But for our own species, Homo sapiens, our greatest asset has always been something less tangible, yet profoundly powerful. It is our ability to cooperate, to form communities, and to live by a shared understanding of right and wrong. This is the essence of morality. It is a kind of unseen compass, guiding our interactions and allowing us to build societies far more complex than any other animal has ever conceived. This journey of our moral sense is perhaps the most remarkable story of all. Morality is not merely a set of rules handed down from on high. Instead, it is a living, breathing system that has grown and adapted with us throughout our long history. It began simply, as a practical tool for survival. Early humans living in small, vulnerable groups quickly learned that their chances were better together. Sharing food, protecting one another from predators, and caring for the young were not just kind gestures, they were essential survival tactics. The feelings of empathy, fairness, and loyalty that arose from these necessities became the very first threads in the intricate fabric of human morality, a foundation upon which everything that followed would be built. As our world has changed, so too has our understanding of what it means to be good. The simple rules that worked for a small band of hunter-gatherers were not sufficient for the bustling cities of the first civilizations. New challenges required new moral thinking. The invention of writing allowed us to codify our rules into laws. The rise of great religions provided divine frameworks for our ethical lives. And the dawn of science and reason encouraged us to question tradition and seek a morality based on universal principles of justice and human dignity. It is a continuous story of expansion and refinement. And so we embark on an epic journey through time to trace the evolution of this most human of traits. We will travel from the campfires of our ancient ancestors to the digital forums of the 21st century. We will see how our moral circle has expanded, slowly but surely, to include not just our immediate family or tribe, but all of humanity, and even the planet itself. This is the story of how we learn to live with one another, a story of struggle and progress, and one that is still being written today, as we face the unprecedented challenges of a truly globalized world. In the vast, untamed landscapes of our prehistoric past, human life was a precarious affair. Our ancestors were not the strongest or the fastest creatures. They survived by their wits and, most importantly, by their ability to work together. In these small, tight-knit bands of hunter-gatherers, morality was not an abstract philosophy. It was a practical toolkit for group survival. The most fundamental rule was cooperation. Sharing the spoils of a successful hunt or a fortunate find of edible plants was not an act of charity, but a vital investment in the group's collective future. A hunter who shared his meat today might be the one who needed to be fed tomorrow. This reciprocity was the bedrock of their social world. Within these groups, a clear social structure emerged, guided by simple yet powerful moral codes. Loyalty to one's kin was paramount. The family unit was the core of society, and protecting it was a sacred duty. Respect for elders was also crucial. The older members of the band were the living libraries of their people, holding essential knowledge about hunting grounds, water sources, and the subtle signs of changing seasons. Their wisdom was a resource the group could not afford to lose, so their authority was seldom questioned. These early moral instincts were deeply ingrained, shaping social behavior long before any written laws or religious texts existed. Alongside these principles of cooperation and respect, early human societies also developed a strong sense of taboos. These were powerful prohibitions against actions that could threaten the stability and harmony of the group. Acts like murder, theft within the tribe, or incest were universally condemned because they could tear the delicate social fabric apart, leading to internal conflict and weakening the group against external threats. These taboos were enforced not by police or courts, but by the powerful forces of social approval and disapproval. Banishment from the group was often a death sentence, a powerful deterrent that kept individual impulses in check for the good of the all. This early form of morality was, by its very nature, limited in its scope. The circle of moral concern was small, typically extending only to the members of one's own band or tribe. Outsiders were often viewed with suspicion, fear, or hostility. The same empathy and loyalty that bound the group together did not necessarily apply to strangers, who might be competitors for scarce resources. This in-group morality was a crucial adaptation for its time, ensuring the survival of small, competing human populations. It was a necessary first step, but one that humanity would have to transcend as its societies grew larger and more interconnected. The shift from nomadic hunting and gathering to settled agriculture was one of the most profound revolutions in human history. As people began to cultivate crops and domesticate animals, they could support much larger populations in one place. This led to the rise of the first villages, towns, and eventually, sprawling cities. With this increase in scale and complexity came entirely new social challenges. The simple, informal rules of the hunter-gatherer band were no longer sufficient to manage societies of thousands. A more formal and systematic approach to morality and justice was needed, and humanity rose to the occasion by inventing new tools, written laws, and organized philosophy. In the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, we see one of the earliest and most famous examples of this development. The Code of Hammurabi, carved onto a towering stone stele around 1750 BC, was not the first legal code, but it is the most complete one we have from this period. It laid out specific laws and punishments for a wide range of offenses, from property disputes to assault. The principle of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, may seem harsh to us today, but it represented a significant moral advance. It established that justice should be administered by the state, not by personal vengeance, and it attempted to make punishments proportional to the crime, a cornerstone of legal systems ever since. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, great thinkers began to ponder the nature of right and wrong in a more philosophical way. In ancient Greece, philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle moved beyond simply stating rules and began to ask why certain actions were good or bad. They explored concepts like virtue, justice, and the ideal state. They argued that morality was not just about following rules, but about cultivating a virtuous character and using reason to determine the correct course of action. This was a monumental shift, suggesting that humans could understand and shape their own moral destinies through intellectual inquiry rather than simply obeying tradition. This flourishing of moral thought was not confined to Greece. In China, Confucius taught that a harmonious society was built on a foundation of personal morality, emphasizing virtues like filial piety, righteousness, and benevolence. He believed that if individuals cultivated their own character, social order would naturally follow. In India, a rich tapestry of philosophical and religious thought, including the concepts of dharma, moral duty, and karma, the consequences of one's actions, provided a comprehensive framework for ethical living. Across the ancient world, humanity was hard at work, building the foundational blueprints for the complex moral systems that would guide civilizations for millennia. As civilizations grew, so did their gods. The rise of major world religions marked another profound transformation in the human moral journey. Faiths like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism offered their followers something new and incredibly powerful, a moral code that was seen as universal and absolute, handed down from a divine or transcendent source. This shifted the basis of morality from social convention or philosophical reasoning to sacred command. For billions of people, the answer to the question, "Why should I be good?" became, because God, or the cosmic order, commands it. This divine authority gave moral rules an unprecedented weight and influence. These religious frameworks provided comprehensive guides for living. They offered clear distinctions between right and wrong, good and evil, often detailed in sacred texts like the Bible, the Quran, or the Vedas. Concepts like the Ten Commandments in Judaism and Christianity, or the Five Pillars of Islam, provided followers with a clear set of duties and prohibitions. These were not just suggestions, they were divine laws, and breaking them could have consequences not only in this life, but in the afterlife as well. This belief in divine judgment, in heaven, hell, or reincarnation, became a powerful motivator for moral behavior on a massive scale. Furthermore, religions fostered the development of specific virtues that followers were encouraged to cultivate. Christianity, for example, championed the virtues of faith, hope, and charity, famously articulated by St. Paul. Islam placed a strong emphasis on compassion, justice, and generosity, particularly towards the poor and needy through the practice of zakat. Buddhism taught the importance of compassion, or karuna, and loving kindness, or metta, towards all sentient beings. These virtues were not just about avoiding sin, they were about actively shaping one's character to be more aligned with the divine ideal, creating a positive and aspirational vision of the moral life. The influence of religion on morality was immense and enduring. It helped to unify vast and diverse empires under a shared ethical framework, providing a common language of right and wrong that transcended local customs. It inspired countless acts of charity, the building of hospitals and schools, and the creation of magnificent works of art. Of course, this power also had a darker side, as religious differences have also been the cause of conflict and persecution throughout history. Nevertheless, for many centuries, the great religions provided the primary lens through which most of humanity understood its moral purpose in the universe. After centuries in which morality was largely anchored in religious doctrine, a new intellectual storm began to gather in Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries. This period, known as the Enlightenment, or the Age of Reason, championed the power of the human mind to understand the world and solve its problems. Thinkers like John Locke, Voltaire, and Immanuel Kant began to argue that morality did not need to be based on divine revelation alone. They proposed that we could use reason and observation to discover universal moral principles, just as we use them to discover the laws of physics. This was, honestly, a revolutionary idea that would fundamentally reshape Western thought. At the heart of this new moral philosophy was a profound focus on the individual. John Locke, for instance, argued that all individuals are born with certain natural rights, namely, the rights to life, liberty, and property. These rights were not granted by any king or church. They were inherent to being human. This idea was radical. It suggested that the purpose of government was not to enforce divine will, but to protect the rights of its citizens. This laid the intellectual groundwork for the great democratic revolutions in America and France, which proclaimed that all men are created equal and endowed with inalienable rights. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant took this rational approach to morality a step further. He sought to find a moral law that was truly universal, one that could be derived from logic itself. He formulated what he called the categorical imperative, one version of which states that we should act only according to that maxim, whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. In simpler terms, he was asking us to consider, what if everyone did that? This powerful thought experiment encouraged people to think beyond their own personal interests and consider the logical consistency and fairness of their actions if applied to everyone, everywhere. This shift towards reason and individual rights did not eliminate religion, but it did change its role in public life. It promoted the idea of religious tolerance, arguing that matters of faith were a personal concern and should not be dictated by the state. This new way of thinking championed ideals like liberty, progress, and equality. It argued that a just society was one that treated all its citizens fairly, protected their freedoms, and allowed them to pursue their own happiness. The Enlightenment provided a powerful new vocabulary for talking about morality, one based on universal human dignity and the power of reason, which continues to shape our world today. The 20th century was a time of unprecedented turmoil and transformation. It witnessed two devastating world wars, the horrors of the Holocaust, and the rise and fall of totalitarian regimes. This immense suffering served as a brutal but powerful catalyst for moral reflection. The world was, forced to confront the catastrophic consequences of ideologies that denied the basic humanity of others. In the aftermath of this carnage, there was a powerful global consensus that something had to be done to prevent such atrocities from ever happening again. This led to one of the most significant moral achievements of the modern era, the development of a global human rights framework. In 1948, the newly formed United Nations adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This landmark document was built directly upon the foundations laid by Enlightenment thinkers, but it expanded them for a global age. For the first time in history, nations from around the world came together to declare that every single human being, regardless of race, religion, gender, or nationality, is born with fundamental rights and freedoms. It proclaimed rights to life, liberty, security, and education, and it condemned slavery, torture, and discrimination. It was a bold and aspirational statement, a moral promise from humanity to itself. The second half of the 20th century was defined by struggles to make the promise of these rights a reality. The civil rights movement in the United States fought to dismantle centuries of racial segregation and discrimination. demanding that the nation live up to its founding ideals of equality. Across the world, anti-colonial movements challenged the moral legitimacy of empires, asserting the right of all peoples to self-determination. The feminist movement fought for the equal rights and opportunities of women, challenging deeply ingrained patriarchal structures in societies everywhere. Each of these struggles expanded our collective understanding of what justice and fairness require. These movements fundamentally changed our moral landscape. They successfully argued that the circle of moral concern must include all people, not just those of the dominant race, gender, or nation. They taught us that true justice requires not just the absence of oppression, but the active presence of equality and opportunity for all. While the fight for human rights is far from over, the 20th century established a powerful global norm that the dignity of the individual is paramount and that the world has a shared responsibility to protect it. This was a profound moral lesson, learned at a terrible cost. As we moved into the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the world became more interconnected than ever before. Global trade, travel, and communication technologies have woven us together into a single global community. This new reality has presented us with a fresh set of moral challenges and has prompted yet another expansion of our moral thinking. Our actions, we have come to realize, have consequences that ripple across the planet. The clothes we wear might be made by workers on the other side of the world, and the energy we consume can affect the climate for generations to come. This has forced us to think about our responsibilities not just as citizens of a nation, but as citizens of the world. One of the most significant moral developments of this era has been the rise of the environmental movement. For most of human history, nature was seen as a resource to be exploited or a force to be tamed. But now, faced with the realities of climate change, mass extinction, and pollution, we are beginning to see things differently. A new environmental ethic is emerging, one that argues we have a moral responsibility to protect the natural world. This ethic suggests that our moral circle should include not just other humans, but also animals, ecosystems, and even future generations who will inherit the planet we leave behind. Alongside environmental concerns, the issue of global economic justice has come to the forefront. In a world of staggering wealth, billions of people still live in extreme poverty. Globalization has raised difficult moral questions about our obligations to one another. Do wealthy nations have a moral duty to help poorer ones? Are corporations responsible for ensuring fair wages and safe working conditions in their supply chains around the world? These are not easy questions, but they are central to the moral discourse of our time. They challenge us to apply our principles of fairness and compassion on a truly global scale. This expanding circle of moral concern represents a profound shift. It asks us to look beyond our immediate communities and even our own species. It is a morality born of our growing awareness of our own interconnectedness. We are learning that the well-being of our own family, our own nation, is inextricably linked to the well-being of people on the other side of the planet and to the health of the planet itself. This global morality is still in its infancy, and we are still grappling with its implications, but it represents the latest chapter in our long and ongoing journey to understand what it means to live an ethical life. Just as the printing press and the steam engine reshaped their eras, the digital revolution has utterly transformed our own. The internet, social media, and artificial intelligence have connected us in ways that were once the stuff of science fiction. This new digital world has brought incredible benefits, but it has also created a host of new and complex moral dilemmas that our ancestors could never have imagined. We are, in many ways, navigating a completely uncharted ethical territory, and we are having to develop new moral maps to guide us through it. The questions we face are urgent and profound. One of the most pressing challenges is the issue of privacy. In this new age, vast amounts of our personal information are collected, stored, and analyzed by corporations and governments. Every click, every search, and every online conversation can be tracked. This raises fundamental questions about our right to a private life. What information should be considered private? Who should have the right to access it? And for what purposes? We are currently in a great debate, trying to balance the benefits of data-driven innovation and security with the fundamental human need for personal space and autonomy, a right that is much harder to define in the digital realm. Social media has also presented us with a unique set of moral challenges. These platforms have the power to connect people and amplify voices for positive change, but they can also become echo chambers for misinformation and breeding grounds for hatred and division. We are grappling with the difficult question of free speech versus the need to prevent harm. Where do we draw the line between open expression and dangerous incitement? Who should be responsible for policing this new public square? The tech companies themselves, governments, or the users? The very nature of truth and public discourse is at stake. And as we look to the near future, the rapid development of artificial intelligence, or AI, presents perhaps the most significant moral frontier of all. We are building machines that can learn, make decisions, and even create. This forces us to ask deep questions about what it means to be responsible. If an AI-powered self-driving car has an accident, who is at fault? How do we ensure that the algorithms that increasingly make decisions about loans, jobs, and even criminal justice are fair and free from bias? The challenge is to embed our human values, our sense of fairness, compassion, and justice, into the very code of the intelligent systems we are creating. Our long journey from the simple survival ethics of our earliest ancestors to the complex global and digital dilemmas of today reveals a remarkable truth. Human morality is not a static, unchanging monument carved in stone. It is a dynamic, flowing river, constantly shaped by the changing landscape of our societies, our knowledge, and our technologies. It is an ongoing conversation, passed down through generations, in which each era adds its own verse. The core instincts of empathy and fairness that bound the first human bands together are still recognizable within us, but they have been stretched and reinterpreted in ways our forebears could never have foreseen. We have seen how our circle of moral concern has expanded over millennia. It began with the family and the tribe, cautiously expanding to include the city-state and the nation. The great religions and philosophies urged us to see the divine or the human in everyone, pushing the circle wider still. The horrors of the 20th century taught us the necessity of a universal standard of human rights, making the circle truly global. And today we are being challenged to expand it even further, to include future generations, other species, and the health of the planet itself. This expansion is the grand theme of our moral story. This journey has not been a simple, straight line of progress. It has been a story of struggle, of setbacks and breakthroughs, of deep wisdom and terrible folly. For every step forward in our moral understanding, there seem to be forces that try to drag us back, to shrink the circle, to retreat into the tribalism of our ancient past. The moral project of humanity is never finished. It requires our constant attention, our courage, and our willingness to engage in difficult conversations with those with whom we disagree. It demands that we continually re-examine our most cherished beliefs in the light of new evidence and new challenges. And so, the story continues. The challenges of tomorrow, from artificial intelligence to climate change to genetic engineering, will ask new and profound questions of us. They will force us to think even more deeply about what it means to be good, to be just, and to be human. Our success in navigating this future will depend on our ability to continue this great conversation, to learn from our past, and to apply our enduring moral sense with wisdom and compassion. The epic journey of human morality is far from over. In truth, we may find that it has only just begun.